My name's Natalie Foster, and I'm 28 years old. At least that's how I introduced myself in my head every day, responsible, driven professional. My life had always been about doing things the right way. But the family I came from, well, they had a different approach. Perfect on the outside, crumbling on the inside. For years, my parents did their best to create a glossy facade. We were the picture of success, big house, luxury cars, fancy dinners and vacations that would make anyone envious. But behind the glitz, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. My dad, James, had always been the calm, steady force in our home. A high school teacher, never rich, but with an innate sense of pride in his work. My mother, Clara, had grown up poor and always struggled with her relationship with money. I saw it more clearly as I got older. It wasn't just a difference in how we handled finances. It was like a hunger she couldn't quite control. A hunger for luxury, for an image, for something more. But I loved them both, even when the cracks started showing. I always worked hard to keep the balance, to be the one who held it all together, even when I was silently holding my breath. The facade held strong, until it didn't. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're from and what time it is there in the comments. I'd love to know. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Dad had always been the strongest man I knew. He wasn't physically imposing, but there was something about him, something grounded. He'd been my rock my whole life, from teaching me how to manage money the right way, mind you, to giving me my first job at his high school just so I could learn what it meant to work hard. But recently, I'd started seeing the toll life had taken on him, his health especially. I'd noticed him getting winded more often, taking longer breaks, when he was mowing the lawn, his hand shaking when he tried to write a grocery list. It all came crashing down when he was diagnosed with a serious heart condition, aortic stenosis. The doctor said it was serious. He needed a specialized procedure, one that wasn't fully covered by his insurance. The doctor recommended a leading cardiologist in Charleston, but the treatment was out of network, and the cost was enormous, around $75,000. My mom, Clara, came to me eyes wide and red from crying. "Please, Natalie," she said, clutching a folder of medical papers. "We don't know what to do. Your father needs this procedure, but we don't have the money." I felt that familiar twinge of guilt, the one that always made me feel like I had to fix everything. It wasn't the first time my family had asked for help, but this felt different. Life or death, different. "I'll figure it out," I said, though. I had no idea how. The next day, she came to me again, this time more urgent. "Can you help just for a little while? The loan we applied for won't come through for 2 months. The doctor's saying we need to act fast." I hesitated. My gold card was my safety net, my symbol of everything I'd worked for. It was the only one I kept for emergencies, and I never let it get anywhere near maxed out. But this was Dad. He was everything to me. If this was the way I could help him, then I would. "Okay," I said. "But it's only for Dad's treatment, and I need receipts for everything," Clara promised, and for a moment I felt a small, misplaced peace settle over me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it was only the beginning. It didn't take long for the first crack to appear. I was working late one evening at the agency, barely keeping my eyes open after a long stretch of days filled with client meetings and back-to-back projects. I opened Instagram to scroll mindlessly for a few minutes before bed, thinking it would help me unwind. The first post on my feed froze me in place. It was Lily, my sister. She was lounging in a pristine, sun-soaked spot on a beach in Hawaii. A tropical drink sat in her hand, the ocean stretched behind her, in what could have been a vacation ad. I stared at the picture, my mind racing. My heart sank as I read the caption, "Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. Blessed Satasa Hawaii Sata living my best life." She was on vacation, a luxury vacation. I could hardly breathe. How was this possible? Mom had specifically asked for my card to cover Dad's medical expenses, and now this picture of my sister living it up. I texted her immediately, trying to maintain composure, even though my fingers shook. "Lily, where are you?" "What is this?" Mom said. The money was for Dad's treatment. The reply came quickly. Too quickly, almost as if she were waiting for it. "Oh yeah, I used your card. But don't worry, I only used $100,000. It's all good." My stomach turned. $100,000, only used. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. The card had a limit of $10,000. The tone of her message made me want to scream. How could she be so carefree about it? She thought it was a joke, thought it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered. I took a breath, fighting the wave of anger and helplessness that threatened to break me. I didn't even know where to start. My dad's life was on the line, and my sister was in Hawaii, buying Gucci bags and posting selfies like everything was fine. I called Mom, praying this was some kind of misunderstanding, but it went straight to voicemail. I was shaking now, trying to steady myself. My thoughts scattered, heart pounding. How could they do this? But I had no proof. No receipts. No confirmation that the money had been misused. Nothing tangible, except for Lily's smile on that beach, the satisfaction in her eyes, as if the money was hers to spend. So I started digging. I knew something had to be off. The next day, I couldn't focus. I was sitting in a meeting, staring at my screen, but my mind was 1,000 miles away. Lily's vacation posts kept replaying in my head. I couldn't shake the image of her sitting on that beach, laughing as she posted about her blessed life. It didn't help that I hadn't heard back from Mom either. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and I needed to understand exactly what had happened. During lunch, I started digging. I opened the Instagram app, scrolling through Lily's feed again. Every post I found felt like a slap in the face. More pictures from the trip, her at the hotel pool, the latest high-end store she'd shopped at, the expensive meals she'd posted. There were tags for all the luxury spots, the boutiques, the resorts, all the places that cost a fortune to even walk into. I pulled up my credit card transactions and scrolled through them. My eyes caught the first charge, $2,500 for a flight to Hawaii. A few clicks later, there were thousands more. Luxury hotels, fine dining, designer stores. Each charge was higher than the last. My stomach flipped. I opened my bank app, knowing it was going to be bad, but I wasn't prepared for just how bad it was. There were charges I hadn't authorized. A charge for a luxury suite at a hotel in Maui. Another one for a private tour at an exclusive beach club. I almost couldn't breathe. My mind couldn't wrap around what I was seeing. I called the credit card company immediately, my hands trembling as I held the phone. I need to report these charges. They weren't authorized. Can you specify which ones? The customer service rep asked. I read off the numbers one by one, feeling a bitter sense of betrayal rising within me. This was it. This was the proof. Are you sure these charges weren't yours? The rep asked. I'm positive. My sister is in Hawaii, and she's the one who used the card. Okay, I've flagged these transactions, and they'll be reviewed. We'll follow up with you soon. I hung up, feeling numb. The reality hit me all at once. My mother had lied to me. She had told me that the card was being used for Dad's medical expenses, but instead they had used it to fund Lily's vacation without my knowledge, without my consent. And I'd fallen for it. I still hadn't heard from Mom. At that point, I didn't know whether to call her or drive to their house and confront them in person. Everything I had worked for, my trust, my finances, my family, was slipping through my fingers. The next few hours were a blur. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was staring me in the face. And then it hit me. I needed to confront them. I needed to expose this betrayal once and for all. I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to face them, Mom, Lily, and the mess they'd made. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys, the weight of the evidence in my mind bearing down on me. I kept thinking about Dad, his heart condition, his vulnerability, and now his care was being neglected, while my sister was on a shopping spree halfway across the world. I drove to my parents' house, the car feeling smaller, with every mile I put between myself and my apartment. The sun was starting to set, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood as I parked in front of their house. It looked the same big, beautiful, the perfect house they'd always wanted. But tonight, I knew it was just another facade. I rang the doorbell. The sound felt deafening. I could hear the faint shuffle of footsteps on the other side before Mom opened the door. She looked surprised to see me. She always did, like she wasn't expecting me to ever really push back, let alone come at her with something like this. "Amber, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. It was so obvious now that I could hardly stand it. "I need to talk to you, now." My voice was steady, but beneath it, my heart was racing. I had to hold it together. This was the moment that could change everything. She stepped aside, and I walked in glancing at Lily, who was sitting on the couch. Her eyes widened when she saw me. For a split second, I thought I saw something like guilt flash in her eyes, but it quickly turned into defensiveness. "What's going on?" Lily asked, feigning innocence. "Where's the money, Mom?" I asked. My voice felt cold, sharp, cutting through the air between us. "What do you mean?" She blinked, but her face was pale. She was already beginning to unravel. "The credit card, Mom," I said, my throat tight. "I gave it to you for Dad's medical expenses, not for vacationing in Hawaii with Lily." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I pulled out my phone. I opened the Instagram app, my hands shaking as I showed them Lily's photos. "Explain this." Lily's face went white as she saw the photos. I didn't think it was that big a deal," she muttered, but her voice cracked. "You didn't think," I repeated, my anger rising like a tidal wave. "You didn't think stealing my credit card and using it for a luxury vacation was a big deal. You've been treating my hard work like your personal piggy bank. And you, Mom, you promised me that this was for Dad's treatment. You lied to me. You've both lied." Mom's face twisted. She looked almost scared. But I wasn't buying it anymore. It wasn't like that, she started. "We needed it." "Lily!" She needed a break. She's been so stressed out. I didn't know how else to help. I didn't even want to hear it. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. "No. You knew exactly what you were doing, and now it's all out in the open," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The truth hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The silence between us was unbearable. Lily, who had always been the baby, seemed to shrink into herself, her usual bravado crumbling. I wanted to yell, to let out every bit of the anger I'd been holding in for years, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was bigger than the vacation, bigger than the betrayal. This was about family, and it was time I stopped letting them walk all over me. Mom tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She was caught cornered by the truth. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care about protecting her feelings. "I'm done," I said, turning to leave. "I've done enough. You'll have to figure this out without me." I walked out of the house, the door slamming shut behind me. The weight of the confrontation settled over me, and as I stood there in the driveway, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I had done it. I had finally stood up for myself. But I also knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of what was going to be a long, painful journey. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing for sure: I was never going to let anyone use me again. The next few days were a blur. I didn't want to talk to my mother or Lily, but they kept reaching out, trying to explain themselves, apologize, or twist the situation to make themselves seem less guilty. But I couldn't stomach hearing any of it. They'd taken advantage of my trust and used my hard work to fuel their selfish needs. I was done with their lies. I knew I had to take the next step, getting the truth into black and white. I needed proof, something irrefutable to back up what I already knew. And it wasn't just about what I'd seen on Instagram anymore. It was about what I had let slide for years. I spent the entire evening digging through the bank statements, scrolling through every transaction, every charge I could find. The more I looked, the worse it became. There were charges for hotels, expensive ones, a first-class flight to Maui, a private tour of a high-end resort, a shopping spree. At first, I thought maybe there had been some kind of mistake, some accidental charge I'd missed. But no, it was all right there in black and white. $12,000 for a suite at the Grand Y Resort. $3,500 at a high-end boutique in Honolulu. Another $5,000 for a private spa experience. My fingers froze on the keyboard as I took it all in. I couldn't stop staring at the numbers. The charges added up quickly, and all of them had been made within the span of just a few days. None of these purchases were for my father's medical expenses. They were for Lily's vacation, and they were charged to me. The realization hit me like a brick wall. This wasn't just about my mother's bad judgment or my sister's lack of accountability. This was theft, plain and simple. I couldn't just let it slide. I couldn't just accept their apologies and move on. They needed to understand the magnitude of what they'd done and the damage they'd caused. And for that, I needed solid proof. I pulled out my phone and began screenshotting everything: the charges, the dates, the amounts. I was methodical, gathering evidence that would show them exactly how deep their deceit ran. I had to be prepared. I had to have something concrete if this was going to turn into a legal battle. I didn't want to get the police involved. I didn't want to press charges. But as the numbers piled up and the reality of the situation sank in, I realized there was no other choice. This had gone too far. I could already feel the anxiety gnawing at me. The weight of this wasn't just about the money, it was about my family's betrayal. About the broken trust, the lies, and the manipulation that I had been subjected to for so long. It was painful to admit that the people who should have had my back, the ones I'd given everything for, had only used me. But now I had to protect myself. I called the credit card company the next morning, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. I had all the details, all the evidence. The rep on the other end was sympathetic, but firm. "We'll start an investigation immediately, Miss Foster. Given the size of the charges, this will be taken very seriously." I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief that I was finally doing something about this, something that would hold them accountable. But dread because I knew the consequences. My sister could be facing legal action. And my mother, well, I wasn't sure what would become of her. I hung up feeling numb. But there was no turning back now. The truth was out, and it had nowhere to go but forward. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, texts, and endless internal debate. I had done what I needed to do. I had exposed the truth. But now everything was unraveling. My mother and sister began calling, pleading with me to forgive them, to take it all back. But I was past the point of forgiveness without consequences. I had to stand firm, no matter how much it hurt. The first call came from Mom. Her voice trembled, her words heavy with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Natalie. I don't know what happened. I was just trying to make things better. I didn't think it would go this far." I could barely respond. I wanted to scream to tell her how much she had broken me, how much trust she had shattered. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed silent for a long moment. "I'm done, Mom," I said quietly. "You took my trust, my work, and you turned it into a joke. You took something that was supposed to be for Dad for his health, and you used it to pamper yourselves. I can't just forgive that." I could hear her sniffling through the phone, but my resolve didn't waver. She didn't get to make excuses anymore. She didn't get to manipulate me with her tears. The silence stretched. Finally, she whispered, "But Natalie, this is our family." "Not anymore, Mom," I said. "Not the way it used to be. I've been your fixer for so long, and I'm tired of it. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the one who cleans up everyone else's mess." I hung up without another word, my heart pounding in my chest. The relief of finally standing up for myself was mixed with the bitter sting of guilt and sadness. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. Later that afternoon, Lily texted me. Her message was short, but no less infuriating. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just money. Don't act like you've never spent that much." My blood boiled. She still didn't get it. She still didn't understand what she'd done. This wasn't about money. It was about respect boundaries and the trust that had been broken. But the words I wanted to say wouldn't come. Instead, I typed out the most measured response I could muster. "You don't get it, Lily. This isn't just about the card. It's about you using me, about the years of manipulation. You can't just keep taking and expect me to always fix it." She didn't reply right away, but when she did, it was filled with anger and self-pity. "You don't understand. You've always been the responsible one. Why do you get to make all the decisions for everyone? I'm not you, Natalie. I can't just work myself into the ground to make everyone happy." I read the text and felt my chest tighten. There it was, the excuse. The "I'm not you" line that had always been the crux of her behavior. She had always been the one who got a free pass, while I was the one who had to hold it all together. My head throbbed. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not yet. There was no time for that. I needed to focus on what was in front of me now, fixing this. A few hours later, I received a call from Aunt Paula. Her voice was calm but concerned. "I know this isn't easy, sweetheart, but you need to know you're not alone in this. I know it feels like the whole world's against you, but I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Your mother, she's a difficult one, but this isn't the end of your relationship." "I don't know what else to do, Aunt Paula. I can't just forgive them. They've gone too far." "I get it. I really do," she replied. "But remember, family doesn't always have to mean letting everything go. You can still be there for your father, but you also need to take care of yourself." Her words cut through the noise, giving me a moment of clarity. It was hard to hear, but it was true. I didn't need to fix everything. I didn't need to sacrifice my well-being just to hold a family together that had never truly supported me the way I deserved. I spent the next few days buried in work, trying to push the family drama aside. But it was impossible. The weight of it was everywhere at home, at the office, in my head. It was like an invisible force pulling at me from every direction. The legal process had started. The credit card company had confirmed the fraudulent charges, and they were taking it seriously. The merchants involved were filing claims for the unpaid bills, and Lily's reckless spending was quickly becoming a legal nightmare for her. I had made my decision. I couldn't cover for her anymore. But as the situation spiraled, I had to make another choice. How far was I willing to let this go? Was I ready to press charges? Could I go through with it? I stood at a crossroads I never expected to face. I had done the hardest part already. I had confronted the lies, gathered the evidence, and started the process of holding my family accountable. But the hardest decision still lay ahead, whether to press charges or not. The legal ramifications of Lily's actions were no small matter. She had used my credit card without permission, and the charges were enormous. It wasn't just the amount of money, it was the breach of trust. The fraud, the lies, the manipulation, all of it was bigger than I could have ever imagined when I first handed over that card. But now the full weight of it was crashing down on me. I spent hours staring at the phone screen, going over the options in my mind. The credit card company had made it clear the charges had been flagged as fraud, and they were already investigating. But they needed my decision about pressing charges. If I did, it would trigger a full legal process, and Lily could be facing serious consequences. The weight of that hit me every time I thought about it. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about principle. Could I live with myself if I let her go unpunished, knowing that she might do this again? Could I turn my back on my family completely, knowing that the path to healing might involve legal consequences? I called Aunt Paula for advice, even though I already knew her answer. She had always been the one who offered a voice of reason, the one who could see past the emotional mess I often got tangled in. I needed her perspective now more than ever. "You need to do what's right for you, Natalie," she said softly when I explained the situation. "You've already been through so much. You're the one who's been carrying the weight of your family's mistakes for years. But don't let them drag you down any further. You can't fix their problems for them anymore." Her words stung, but in a way they were a relief. I had been carrying the burden of fixing everything for so long, but I realized it wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't my job to clean up their messes. My job was to protect myself, to protect my future. I took a deep breath and sent a message to the credit card company I wanted to proceed with pressing charges. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I loved my family, but they had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. If I let them off the hook now, I would be teaching them that their actions didn't have consequences, and I wasn't willing to do that anymore. Not for them, not for me. After I made the decision, I sat in my apartment, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I didn't know what was going to happen next. The legal process would take time, and Lily's future was hanging in the balance. But I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't let fear or guilt make this decision for me anymore. I couldn't let my family's toxic patterns dictate my life any longer. I focused on what came next. I had to be there for Dad. He was still in the hospital, still in need of treatment. I couldn't let everything else distract me from the fact that he was the only one who truly mattered right now. But even that felt complicated. Mom was doing her best to shield him from everything going on, but the cracks were showing. She couldn't pretend everything was okay. The phone rang, and for a moment, I thought it might be her again. But instead, it was my father's cardiologist. "Miss Foster, I wanted to update you on your father's condition," the doctor said. His voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying concern. "We're starting to see some improvement, but we still need to move forward with the procedure. It's urgent." I felt my chest tighten. The reality of everything else faded away for a moment, and it was like the world stopped spinning. It wasn't about money or my family's mess anymore. It was about Dad. And whatever came next, I had to be there for him. I had already made the decision about the fraud, but I knew there would be other decisions to face. It was all part of this difficult, painful process of reclaiming my life, my boundaries, and my peace. The days after I made the decision to press charges were a strange mix of clarity and chaos. Part of me felt a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. But another part of me, one I could never ignore, felt like I was breaking my family beyond repair. It wasn't just the legal consequences for Lily. It was the realization that things would never be the same again. The family I had known, the family I had tried so hard to protect, was unraveling. The phone calls from Mom continued, each one more desperate than the last. "Natalie, please, we can fix this. We can work this out," she pleaded one evening. "I never meant for it to go this far. You're breaking your father's heart." But the guilt that tried to creep in this time felt different. I didn't feel the familiar pull to smooth things over to ease her fears. I wasn't going to fix it this time. I wasn't going to jump in and clean up the mess they had made. For once, I could say no. And I did. "Mom, you need to face the consequences of what you did. I can't keep fixing things for you." Her silence on the other end was deafening. I almost expected her to start crying, but instead she just said, "I understand. I just never thought you'd turn your back on us." "I'm not turning my back on you, Mom," I said, my voice trembling despite my resolve. "I'm just finally taking care of myself. I can't keep ignoring the fact that you've used me for years." The conversation ended with nothing resolved, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to call back and apologize. I let the silence hang between us. The next few days were filled with paperwork, letters from the credit card company, legal notices, statements from the merchants involved. I tried not to think about what it all meant for Lily. She was facing the very real possibility of legal action. I didn't want to ruin her life, but at the same time, I couldn't pretend she hadn't stolen from me. The legal process took its toll on me, even as I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. I spent most of my time at the hospital trying to stay focused on Dad. His treatment was moving forward, but his health remained fragile. We didn't know what the outcome would be, but I kept my promise to him. I'd be there for him no matter what happened with the rest of the family. I noticed a change in him. The stress of everything, of Mom, of Lily, of the situation, was taking a toll on him too. But there was something else, a shift in his demeanor. He wasn't just passive anymore. He was waking up to the truth. One night when I was visiting, he finally said the words I had been waiting to hear. "Natalie, I've been wrong. I've always let Clara handle the finances, let her take control of everything. I should have stepped in. I should have protected you. You didn't deserve this." Hearing that made something inside me break open. For the first time, my father was acknowledging the damage that had been done, the role he had played in enabling it. "Dad, you didn't know," I said, my voice quiet. "But I'm glad you're starting to see it. It's not your fault." He shook his head, his face full of regret. "I should have seen it sooner, but I wasn't strong enough to stand up to her to tell her no. I was too focused on keeping the peace." The tears that welled up in my eyes weren't just for him, they were for me too. For the person I had been, the one who had always sacrificed everything to keep the peace. For the person I was becoming, the one who could no longer ignore the truth. "Maybe peace isn't always worth it," I whispered. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. After the conversation with Dad, I felt something shift inside me, a clarity I hadn't had before. This process of healing, of standing up for myself, of confronting the truth, wasn't just about protecting myself from my family. It was about me reclaiming my life, my autonomy, and my sense of self-worth. I had to heal from the years of neglect, manipulation, and emotional abuse I had silently accepted. The legal process with Lily and Mom would play out. But I knew I had done everything I could to hold them accountable. I couldn't control the outcome, but I could control how I responded. And for the first time in years, I was making decisions that were right for me. When I finally left the hospital that night, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't known in a long time. It wasn't a resolution, nothing would ever be the same again, but it was a beginning of something new. Months passed, and with each day, the pain of the past seemed to fade just a little bit. I won't say everything was perfect, or that I had some grand epiphany, and everything suddenly clicked into place. Life doesn't work like that. But with each step I took, I felt like I was reclaiming more of myself. My family, what remained of it, was still fractured, but I had learned something important in all of this: boundaries don't destroy relationships, they protect them. Lily had taken responsibility in her own way. She was working at a small cafe, trying to rebuild the mess she'd made. I wasn't sure if her transformation was genuine, but I saw a small glimmer of effort. She was making payments on the restitution plan she'd agreed to, and that was something. She had gone to therapy and seemed to realize slowly that her actions had consequences. Still, I couldn't fully trust her again, not yet. Maybe not ever. But the fact that she was doing the hard work to change gave me hope that she might be able to turn things around. Mom! Well, Mom was more complicated. She had started attending therapy to address her relationship with money and her childhood trauma. It wasn't easy, and there were many setbacks along the way. She would slip back into old habits, still trying to justify her behavior and her need to maintain appearances. But there was a small shift in her, too. Slowly, she was beginning to understand that she didn't need to keep up with the Joneses, that her worth wasn't tied to the shiny things she owned or the image she projected. We were still working through things. We were still broken, still healing. But we were talking more openly, and that was something. For the first time in years, I felt like there was hope. I had started to feel better about my life. My career at the agency was thriving. I had a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted. I was teaching financial literacy classes at a local community center, something I'd always wanted to do, but had never had the time for. Helping others understand the value of money, how to use it, save it, and protect it, felt like a way to turn the pain I'd experienced into something positive. But more than that, I was finally learning how to let go. I wasn't the fixer anymore. I wasn't the one who had to keep everything together for everyone else. I had learned that it was okay to step back to take care of myself and to let others face their own consequences. When I finally sat down to dinner with Dad that evening, the atmosphere felt different. Not perfect, but different. There was a sense of quiet respect and understanding that we had been through something unimaginable, but had somehow found our way through it. He had always been a man of few words, but as we ate, he looked at me, his eyes full of emotion. "You've really done something, Natalie," he said quietly. "I never thought you'd be the one to break the cycle. But you did." I looked at him and smiled softly. "I didn't want to, Dad, but I had to." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything to me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly seen. Not just as the responsible daughter, but as my own person capable of standing up for myself and my beliefs. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, about what came next, about rebuilding, about moving forward. For the first time, I felt hopeful. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that I was no longer a prisoner to my family's dysfunction. I had taken back my power, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was on solid ground. The road ahead would be long, and there would be bumps along the way. But now, I had a sense of clarity and a sense of peace. I was learning how to forgive, without forgetting to heal, without compromising my boundaries. I was learning how to move forward, not with resentment, but with the strength to create the life I deserved. The path was still unfolding, but I was walking it with my head held high. And for the first time, I felt like I was ready to face whatever came next on my own terms. So here I am, months later, stronger, not because I didn't break, but because I did and still chose to rebuild. I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how we teach others how to treat us. And forgiveness. It's not about forgetting, it's about releasing the grip the past has on your future. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to protect yourself? How did it change you? Tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone. If this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about healing truth and starting over. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself is never the wrong decision. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most powerful kind of love is the kind that finally says enough.